only in America.
Right, so what you've got is basically all the social media process. Basically, I'm eating a hot dog at this hole. Now I'm eating a burger. Now I'm eating some chicken wings.
And now I'm seeing my cardiologist on the 18th.
Welcome to Cloud Realities, an original podcast from Capgemini. And this week, it is a conversation show exploring the deep importance of ethics as we move forward into the intelligence age. I'm Dave Chapman.
I'm Esmee van Giezen.
And I'm Rob Kernahan.
So, it's CR100. I think we should mark the occasion by talking about our centenary, don't you?
When you say CR100, what does that refer to? Because we've done more than 100 episodes, David, and we've had this conversation before. So quite frankly, as I always am, I'm confused because this isn't our centenary record.
Now, we have got a CR number that's on the front of every episode. This is CR100. Now, we've done a number of other episodes because we do live episodes. So we've done 30 or 40 of those. And we've done some specials, like the recent Telecoms miniseries, for example. So this is effectively number 100 of the standard studio record episodes. That's right, Marcel?
That's correct.
So,
and when we look at the back office, sort of the back office tool that we use, it's episode 155.
55.
Yeah, so are we just going to celebrate random events then? Is that what this is? Is this just an excuse to go cheers, clink, and off we go again? It feels like that because like the numbering system is like,
But you mentioned the live ones, Dave, and basically we recorded 46 episodes.
Yeah, right.
But sometimes we combine episodes for live, so it's day one, and we have multiple records. So basically, we published 46 episodes that were live, but basically we recorded 62.
There you go. So we've done 100 plus 62.
Plus the telecom specials, that's 4.
4 of them.
166.
Doesn't feel like a number we should be celebrating.
No.
Basically, this is a massive sham. To the listeners, sorry, I must apologise for our poor accounting.
Well, I think, Marcel, you and I, we can celebrate the 100, shall we?
Yeah, champagne.
You are the producers, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah, every moment has a champagne moment, so it's okay.
If you took the sham that was the recording we did this morning, and Marcel's not unable to hit a recording button, Dave logs in and finds it straight away. I'm not sure that it's producer in name only if we're going there, because it's definitely not a producer that helps.
What's that thing where you have to do like 10,000 hours before you actually get to be good at anything?
Must be 20,000.
You got a fair way to go yet, Marcel, for this morning's situation.
What I loved was, I can't see the button, it's not working. Dave logs in, start recording. It's like, what?
It's something personal. So I saw the button. It was a red button, record, start session. And when I hovered over it with my mouse, it disappeared. It was like David Copperfield. So it was.
It's like the system knows it wants to frustrate you, but it has respect for Dave, so it didn't disappear the button.
It's the same with your mic. We continuously keep saying you are not on the right mic.
You sound like you're in an echo place.
Shouting into a bin.
No, that's my house. So I have a design house.
You know what? We should let the listeners know that Marcel always records his episodes from the bathroom. That's what it sounds like, that you're in some sort
live
of...
from the tub.
Yeah, live from the tub.
Normally under the shower, so...
Oh.
Anyway, look, it is a centenary of some description, and it's just worth saying a quick thank you to everybody who listens to the show. We really, really appreciate you taking the time out to spend an hour or so a week with us. We hope you get something from it, and we've got some brilliant stuff coming up over the course of the next few weeks, and then we will take a bit of a break over the summer as usual, and we will be back for season 5. So with that, congrats everybody. Let's move on. And to help us with such a weighty subject, I'm delighted to say, in this Access All Areas episode, and for those, just as a reminder, this is a bit where we just get some of our friends in that we work with on a day-to-day basis, and we just kind of kick the ball around and explore some of these subjects. So I'm delighted to say we've got Philip Harker and James Wilson with us, our friends from Capgemini. Philip, just want to say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Hey, I'm Philip, and I lead our insights and data advisory practice in the UK.
Good to see you, mate. And James?
Yeah, hi guys. So I'm James Wilson. So I'm an AI ethicist working in the global AI labs, and I also spend a lot of time working with Philip on the data-powered industries and domains stuff.
Given the subject matter today, James, glad you're here. Glad you're here. So you can
relevant,
lead us through a murky and difficult, but probably one of the biggest topics of our age, I think it is fair to say. Robert, frame us up. How we're going to get into this.
Okay. So AI is coming. It's coming fast. And there's lots of implications.
It's here, some would say.
Yeah. And the impact is not properly understood. And there's lots of areas we need to explore. What's it mean for us from a human perspective? What's it mean for us from a societal perspective? What's it mean from a work perspective? And we haven't got to grips with it yet. So today's all about a conversation that basically says, what is the ethical thread we have to weave through this new AI that is impacting us? And how do we deal with it? And what's it mean for the future and sort of the road ahead?
Now, Rob.
Yes.
Is this a smokescreen for something?
A smokescreen for something? I'm not sure ethics can be considered a smokescreen, David. I mean, there's a moral conversation in there
somewhere. Are we going to get into the middle somewhere and you're going to bring RPA into this conversation?
You're going to go, just fancy automation, Dave? No, we're not going there. No, this is a serious and deep conversation that we have. And I'm not sure a lot of people are thinking about it in the right way. What's the structure? What's the framework? What's the way we should approach it? And it goes a lot further than most people think.
It does.
Right? A lot further. And I think it's only through a continuous conversation that we're properly going to be able to explore it. But I'm a great believer in society should be having these sorts of discussions much more than we do. The classic, we'll just shout at each other on Twitter for a laugh and we don't actually get anywhere fast. That is the world we're going into. The algorithm has a lot to answer for. And now we're implementing more of it. So what's going to happen?
No, on a serious note, I couldn't agree more that these conversations are, to say the least, multidimensional. They touch on exciting and sci-fi aspects of what we're doing at the moment, but they also touch on the unknowable challenges that go around this sort of stuff. And it is important to step back and, save space, analyze this and turn the subject around and look at it in multiple different directions. On that note, let's roll in. So we're in a position where I think we framed that up quite nicely. We understand in the world at the moment, obviously the rise of AI is happening all around us. It's difficult to track exactly what that means. Maybe we'll dig into that a little bit in the next half an hour or so. And we also know that needs to be framed in a way and leveraged in a way that we can understand the potential consequences of it. And sometimes at the moment, that is also unknowable. Rob, why don't you kick us off? Just frame up a little bit what the rise looks like. How do you frame up the capability and how is it showing up today?
So we see sort of four themes emerging around AI, and it means we need to pay attention to how those themes are going to affect us as a society, as a business, as a human, etc. So we're seeing AI become very adaptive in the way it behaves. So it can be used for a lot of things. So we're seeing permeate right across our world. It's starting to become proactive. So AI will start to prompt us and tell us to do things. So it's going to start to be not just something we engage with and get an answer, but actually it's going to start becoming part of things that tell us what to do on a day or might be directing us, etc. So it might be in control as a theme.
Without us knowing, you mean?
Yeah, basically. And then there's the rise of the complexity of it. So ever more sophisticated tasks. So we're giving it more responsibility as we go, and we're starting to see that kick in. And then it's becoming autonomous in that capability. So we're starting to see it do things on its own. Yeah. So we're giving control away to it, maybe for good, maybe not so good. So the whole concept of, is it right? Is it ethical? What's the impact? What does that mean for the human? All of that context is starting to come to life now. So we're starting to see this maturity rise in the concept of understanding AI, and that leads to us, so what do we do about it? And we're starting to see new roles emerge associated with that.
So Philip, does that broad framing resonate with you in terms of how it's showing up in the world at the moment?
I'd put an umbrella around that. It's a reality. Right? People are thinking about this, and that thought process isn't over. I think the thinking behind why we do it, and what if and the implications, I think is kind of the important bit that often gets glossed over of racing to, this nice shiny thing. I think there is a wonderful variety of thinking from every typical context, from society to enterprise and everything in between. And I think it's a wonderful discussion to have. But we need to, in parallel to that thinking, interoperate more. We have to action stuff because the pace of change is phenomenal. So we can't be always thinking. We need to kind of be thinking and doing at the same time. And that's kind of quite exciting.
And James, what about you? Does that framing do it for you? Anything missing in it for you?
No, I think it's a good framing, but there are a couple of things that I would add to it, which is that we are a progressive species in general. Everything we do is about progressing what we do, and technology has been a big part of that. And you think, in 1800 the average mortality age was 43, and 90% of the population lived up below the poverty line. We're now at sort of average mortality rate of about 75. Poverty line is about 10%, I think, based on the World Health Organization figures. So technology has done a great deal for us, but we've always in the past done things using a concept of intelligent design in most of the things we do. Right. So, take the space race. Okay, as you can see from behind me, I'm very much a NASA freak. And
so we did land on the moon then. It's official. We did do it.
Yes.
Yeah, where do you stand on
that? Now, can we just get that out of the way? Yeah. We did actually land on the moon.
It was James. It was James. It was your footprint.
Yeah. So how much time have you given thinking about Kubrick versus the actual moon landing, James?
It's seriously, that would be the cost of that conspiracy.
Yeah, right.
Would be more than actually just going to the bloody moon in the first place. It would be.
It would be the most perfectly executed conspiracy theory ever, wouldn't it? And that would be harder also than just going to the moon.
Yeah, they'd just be kicking themselves now if they'd done that. Why didn't we just do it?
It's that thing where they might have started with the conspiracy and then they're all sat around the table going, should we just build a rocket and go to the moon? Be easier.
Exactly.
And there's a person that says, I'll make the flag fly. I'll put the light in the right place. Yeah.
Jeez. But yeah, so getting back to what I was saying about intelligent design, in the past, everything's had a level of intelligent design. And you think about it there's intelligent design from a technology perspective, and there's also intelligent design from a societal perspective. And we've not always got that right. The Industrial Revolution was a nightmare for about 2 generations for most of the people that lived through it. It was very, very few people actually benefited for the 2 generations worth of stress and illness and relocation of people and all that sort of stuff. But we've always had an intelligent design in place, whereas now we don't have that intelligent design. As of September 2022, it's just like we're chucking data at this thing and it's going to do something good. We know it. Yeah. We know it. We're sure of it.
It's almost like you read my mind on that. I was going to go to this place of unknowability around it. I don't know whether you did this on purpose, Rob, but as you were going through those 4 things, at the end of each one, there was almost like this little, and we're not really sure about that bit yet. And we're not really sure about that.
A lot of doubt. Well, not a doubt. I wouldn't use that word. It's not fully understood. Yeah. A lot of unknowns in there, isn't there, right? So we don't know where the path leads us. It looks like a fun path. There's pretty views on it. It appears to be fun so far. But, you might round a bend and go, oh, nice.
Oh, it's Mordor.
Yeah, oh, no.
But that's kind of the fun bit, right? We don't have a trajectory in front of us. No, seriously. We don't know what's around the corner, but it's not a straight road, right? But how do we think in the right way so we can kind of plan what could be around the corner? It's kind of the wisdom bit we've got to bring in and not blindly assume, it's a straight road, because that's just implementing technology for technology's sake, right?
I think that's right. I was sat next to someone at dinner. Maybe it was a couple of years ago now, so maybe they can be forgiven for having this view at the time. But even at the time, I thought, have you really thought that through? And they said, well, AI, it's just going to be like robots in factories, isn't it? Like purely coming at it from a pure controlled, kind of automation perspective. And I was like, I'm not sure. I mean, it might be. Humans are great at taking great technology and not doing a good job of implementing it. we've done that forever. I think we sort of stand in the way of ourselves quite often for a whole host of different reasons. But it feels to me like AI, James, is a bit more than robots in factories, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is so that if you do roll it back 2, 3, 4 years, that people were still in the mindset that it was Moravec's paradox in the opposite direction.
Rob kept saying it's just like RPA. It's just like the RPA revolution all over again.
David.
But it's all about it was all going to be about actually helping us, robots doing stuff and moving stuff. But the thought leadership and the sort of the white collar jobs were going to be the last to go, and it would be the blue collar stuff that we did, and that obviously proved to be entirely the wrong way round.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's still the hard. We're still not at the stage where a robot can crack an egg properly. I know there's some demos that say it can, but it's not
in the wild.
No, you would
like
never.
In a carefully controlled scenario,
Exactly, because we don't have that. They don't. Large language models are not designed to give the AI a proper world model and what it needs from an embodiment for it to be able to actually learn how to work in the wild. If part of the training does not include don't put your hand over a candle, a robot would just continually put its hand over a candle. It would never learn that's going to hurt it. Whereas a human being, it does it once and then hopefully never does it again.
You still can't crack an egg, right? Not enough.
That is actually totally true, isn't it? On that though, James, is that just the LLMs of wherever we are, May 2025, or is there something? Do you think in the tech somewhere for those the layman's among us from a technical perspective that you can see might ultimately get those learning traits versus kind of regurgitating the information that it has?
Yeah, and here you have to be slightly careful because there's kind of an anthropomorphization thing that happens here where we're starting to treat them as. I'm going to be honest with you. I cannot listen to Sam Altman anymore. His voice actually makes me gag. So I'm that annoyed with everything he says. But he talks about AI is at this. It started off at the level of a junior school kid, and now it's moving up to PhD and so on. It's not learning from a world model. It's just regurgitating facts. Even all this stuff about reasoning models that are reasoning, they're not reasoning. It's just very clever chain of prompts that actually take it through a series of different levels to come to an answer. It's not a proper reasoning model. They're not thinking machines. We haven't actually achieved what Turing set out in his paper 75 years ago. It's still just a process. At the end of the day, I don't think the large language model, and I said this about 2 years ago in a Microsoft conference and got a bit of a dismayed look from the Microsoft account lead that was standing next to me. But I said that I think large language models actually could end up being an evolutionary dead end.
Yeah, because they don't have the concept. It's we understand how gravity works. If I drop a ball, I know what's going to happen. I'm able to predict it. Large language models do not do that fundamentally. So we have to augment them. So we want AGI. But we have to augment to get there. Yes. Whereas the Altman view of the world is if I just keep chucking data at this, it's going to become intelligent. And you go, does it work? Does the science really support that? Yeah, it's like one of those, isn't it?
Absolutely.
What do you think about this situation where up until maybe about 6 months ago, most of the AIs were learning and the language models were based on previously created human data? And we're now at a point, or at least a guest that we had on the show a week or two back made the point that actually now there's more AI-created data that the AIs are learning from than human-created data. What are the implications of that, do you think?
This is a brilliant question because I actually wrote a paper on this.
It's first time for everything, Dave. Well done. I think we can chalk that one up. Marcel, can we get a certificate?
Very nice.
Can we get a certificate printed?
Yeah. It had to happen sooner or later.
I did. 150 episodes, and there it is.
So my old employer, Gartner, they've predicted that by 2026, 80% of the internet content will be generative AI created.
Right.
And if you think about that from the point, so I use the Ouroboros kind of concept. So the Ouroboros, which is actually an Egyptian symbol. It's a snake eating its tail. In a ring. Effectively, if you think about as more and more of the content is created from AI, what you're actually doing is you're moving the ratio to the point where when you actually train an AI on that content, you'll get to the point where most of the content is coming from generative AI. Two effects of that. Firstly, a lot of that content's slop. It's just the rubbish, not true. So you're going to get more and more disinformation actually becoming fact as far as the AI is concerned.
Right.
The other thing that's really important, and this is one I'm very, very passionate about, and as Philip knows, I'm a great reader. I read a lot, and I love exploring different styles of writing and so on, is that the way that, because they're effectively probabilistic stochastic models, they're effectively picking the most likely answer for something. What you're going to see is if you take the entirety of, let's just take the English vocabulary, for instance, or English language. If you take the entirety of it and you look at how words are used in the English language, you will see that there are certain people like Roald Dahl, Shakespeare, and people who, if you look at it at a bell curve, their words are going to be kind of on the edges of that bell curve. They're going to be outside.
Right.
Because of the way that AI LLMs work, you're actually going to see that bell curve of what it contains narrowing and narrowing and narrowing, and you're going to lose that kind of language. You're going to lose the variety that is human.
Yeah.
And as you keep going through that, there's a great example of where they took an image. It was an image-based one, but they took an image of some numerals and they passed it through 10 layers of LLM training. And by the 10th layer, it was just generic trash. You couldn't pick out a single number from it.
Interesting. Yeah, Dave Snowden, who runs the Cynefin Foundation, and we've had on the show a couple of times, like a real big thinker. He does a lot of interesting work about dealing with complexity and leadership and things like that. And he's got and I'm not paraphrasing you, James, necessarily, but what your bell curve point there reminded me of is one of Snowden's views is AI makes us dumber in a lot of ways.
It does.
The rich pageantry of options, or the color spectrum that we have as humans, will be filtered down to be, I'm not saying black and white, but it'll be primary colors if it's overworked. So at what point in time do we allow it to grow again or to refilter? I don't know.
To your point there, Philip, that's if you I know you're going to love this because this is coming back to something you were talking about earlier on, which is it's Orwellian. Because actually, when you think about it, it's how I can't remember what the language is called, but the language that they use, which is a very, very structured, very limited vocabulary. Things are double plus good or plus good and so on. They don't have different descriptive terms. That's where we could end up.
Yeah.
One of the things that occurred to me, and maybe this is one of the places that we need to keep the human in the loop, is I'm rather attracted to the notion of what's the role of human critical thinking in the intelligence age. Philip, do you have a thought on that?
We have to think a bit more, right? We have to think a bit more about, is it right rather than just racing to it? And I have to say it, whatever it is, but let's use the pace of change in technology to broaden a horizon of thinking and think about the implications. And those implications are vast. And there is phenomenal good if we get it right. And I don't want to be majoring on all of the naysayers because I'm not a negative person. Yeah. There is enormous opportunity to get things right, but let's not have unintended consequences as a result. Let's look at that human in the loop, to look at the human impact more than anything else. Yeah. And that human impact shouldn't be myopic in terms of the West or the East or the rich or the poor. It needs to look at societal impact of things, to look at unintended consequences. And that's kind of professional, mature thinking, critical thinking process that we should be baking into the race to AI, whatever that entails.
And it's starting to reveal a new role for the human in the loop, doesn't it? So we started out with, there's a new role, prompt engineer, didn't used to exist, now it exists. But now this whole ethical dilemma that's coming up, and what does it actually mean for society, to your point, is becoming ever more critical, that we need to think differently about how technology will affect us. Because like you said, Dave, at the beginning, we implement technology and it just goes down a straight path. Now the path's really windy. So we need to adopt as humans a different role in the whole system.
Isn't there, I couldn't agree more, but isn't there also something that, and I think it was Philip's bell curve definition and Philip's spectrum analogy down to black and white, there's something indefinable in there, perhaps, about what a human brings to things. And let's bring up, Rob, the conversation we've had a few times on the show, which is AI generated music.
Oh,
and
hot topic.
And what is the role for that? And will that, or could that engender the same relationship you could have to, insert your favorite song name here? And what is it about the human creativity versus the kind of automated or artificially intelligent creativity that creates a differentiator? James, have you got a view on that?
Yes, I mean, so for me, when I see a great example, right? Joe Cocker, Woodstock, singing "Little Help with My Friends," right, on stage.
Right.
That's music to me. That's it's the human effort, the endeavor, the passion, and so on. An AI generated version of that does not represent what I'm looking for. I don't think it's the same for everybody. I think I've heard people raving about the fact that they could take their favorite Black Sabbath songs and pipe it in, and it would create a new one for them or whatever. Yeah. But for me, I actually appreciate more the effort and the passion that's gone into something. It's the same with art. I mean, for me, part of it is I don't think I consciously do this, but I think I unconsciously do. I recognize the brush strokes and the effort that went into it. Whereas, an AI artist is going to print something digitally for you. It's not the same. It's not the same. I have this feeling that we may end up at a point where, rather like we had 20, 30 years ago, where you had the buy British kind of thing, or buy British beat, all that sort of stuff, I have a feeling we could end up with a kind of buy human movement where people are actually valuing human creativity.
It's that thing. It's that how you frame it is really important, and it's important to you, right? So you sort of said about the human endeavor, the effort. You get that AI is smashing apart the creativity industry now. You get Coca-Cola famously doing their Christmas advert, which was always a big thing, now totally generated by AI. Did you enjoy it? Was it entertaining? That's one measurement. But then there's the whole... Yeah, if you can remember. Yeah, exactly. But then there's this whole undercurrent that says part of the enjoyment is appreciating how we got to the end state, which is the point. And I think there's that balance. And you're right, it's splitting the audience. So someone's saying, if I sit there and I'm entertained, it's a great application of it. If I sit there and I'm more entertained because I appreciate the endeavor that created the end product, well, then that's a conversation with a level of sophistication that I think will probably play out a lot more in our society.
I can't see me ever being sort of brought to tears by a performance from AI. I may eat those words at some point, but the reality is, I don't see that as.
I'm sure they make you cry.
In my future.
It might make you cry, but for all the wrong reasons. Yeah.
I think it touches upon the same thing as what you just said. If I was envisioning a word cloud, with the bell curve, you only see the words that are being mentioned the most. But we've had this on the show before. I did research way back for my master's, and I did a research on chat roulette. I don't want to dive into the topic of chat roulette again, but one of the key things of that was that you were really surprised by who was popping up on your screen, which made it also very much fun because, you would never search for that kind of person or to connect with that type of person. But it's the same with search engines, right? They also feed you with the same linear thoughts. So did we we're talking about progression, but are we actually progressing if it's doing the exact same thing? So now we think, oh, it's really cool. It's creating images. But now even I think we all have that, like, oh, we see that's an AI generated image. Like a year ago, we were impressed and now it's like, oh yeah, that's AI generated. So are we actually progressing?
But a certain portion of the population won't care. And if we're making a difference, are we overly precious? So it's right for certain things. Do we? And certain things have to be authentic for us to appreciate them. Those things that are there, that's society. That's the arts, that's the cultures. But certain aspects, we shouldn't care if it doesn't matter, if it's commodity space, and filtering those things through. So horses, of course, this is a language I often use, is that certain horses are fit for certain courses. So let's not waste the resources of AI to polishing certain things we don't. There is a need and a desire that we can take away the burden of life by doing certain things. In which case, let's not over polish it. Let's just get on and do it. But we've got to put some rationale behind that and some guide rails. That's kind of ethics, I think, in terms of we apply those things where it matters. It matters a lot. Where it doesn't matter, hey, it doesn't matter.
And I suppose that's the role, the AI ethicist role, right? Which is somebody who thinks on our behalf that can guide us in the right way. Because with a busy life and all of that, but I know, James, this is your
I enjoy
area.
people who think on my behalf, Rob. I find it extremely useful.
I have to think on your behalf when I
like
work
it.
with you to prejudge what's going to happen and stop terror from occurring. So
I like it. Well, I've got the first AGI in the world.
But James, I suppose it's a good point to discuss the concept of somebody thinking about this full time as a new role, and how do we deal with it, and what's the framework they would sort of use to get into it. I mean, it's a really important point, because what we basically discussed is the world's changing. We need to think differently. Well, we need to get people to do that on a full time basis. Otherwise, we might miss something critical.
Yeah, great. I mean, but before we do, just quickly going back to Philip's point, it's I think you just have to be aware that there is definitely a generational difference here as well. Gen Alpha, Gen Z are very much their attitudes to privacy are totally different.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right.
So you will see a different appreciation of AI to what we have as slightly more Esmee accepted.
Thank you for noting that.
Got away with that. But yeah. Anyway,
Marcel's the oldest, just for the record,
by a country mile as well. It's no small margin. Basically, he's got a painting in his loft. We should call him Mr. Gray,
which means he comes with wisdom.
Yeah.
No, I think he's the exception.
You think so?
Wisdom teeth, but yeah. Sorry, Marcel. But yeah. So the role of the ethicist. One thing we should get clear is what I'm not as an ethicist, and I think that it's kind of some of what you said there, Rob, could maybe make people think that I'm the moral sponge for the organisation.
We were hoping that, so I don't have to be moral. Are you saying I still have to have morals? Come on, I can't discharge responsibility.
I've told you before, but yeah, I mean, if you think, do you remember Douglas Adams wrote obviously the Hitchhiker's series, and when he got bored with making the number 42 funny, he went off and did the Dirk Gently books.
Oh yeah, they're quite good. The Dirk Gently books, I quite like them. Yeah,
cracking. But there was a character in there, very minor character, but there was a character called the Electric Monk.
Oh yes, yeah.
And the Electric Monk was someone you could pay to do all your believing for you.
I love it. Yeah, it's a great concept, isn't it?
Outsource conscience, yeah.
Outsource conscience. I am not that. Okay, I am not there to basically take that. What I'm there to do. Okay. What I am there to do is to make sure that we are having the conversations and deciding, doing that thinking about what are the potential concerns that we need to explore and get the right people together to actually make a decision. I do not own those decisions myself. The point of an ethicist is not, as I said, not to be the moral sponge.
And is there a way of framing that in your head and how you educate people around AI and ethics? Because I mean, what we've basically said is there's great potential, but there's potentially great doom in there as well. And I do see you as a sort of Sherpa in your role, or that's how I perceive it, to keep me honest and to keep me going in the right direction. But is there a way of framing it or thinking about it that can get people doing the right thing without sort of creating tragedy?
Before you come back on that as well, James, I want to add in that a little question about tick speed. So how fast these iterations are running and maybe should run. And the thing in my head, and I actually mentioned him earlier, is Snowden's Cynefin framework, where he's got the world of the complicated. And the world of the complicated is very knowable, very plannable. There might be risk, but we've done it before. The world of the complex and the world of chaos are either unknowable in chaos, so you just have to keep taking one small step forward and assessing, and then the complex sits in the middle somewhere where you test, receive results, adapt, test, receive results, adapt. One, am I right in kind of holding that the process you're talking about here around ethics sort of fits in the world of the complex? And how does that function, do you think?
It does, yeah, absolutely. So I mean, there has to be a governance around how we're implementing AI within an organization, and it's not just a technical governance. It's very much it needs to be even broader, I would say, than just necessarily the sort of HR interactions with the governance to make sure that we're dealing with the people aspect of change within the organization. Needs to look at societally, what's the impact beyond the organization, and if you do it right, then you actually can start sort of recognizing that ethics or AI ethics is actually not just a sort of bureaucracy or something that, not bureaucracy is the wrong word, is not a resource drain and a sort of necessary evil. It actually becomes a benefit to the organization because, being seen as an ethical organization, the way you're implementing things and the impact you're having more broadly is actually better for the bottom line for the organization as well. So they have to see there is value in doing this right. And the way of doing it right for me is to, you absolutely, to your Cynefin framework example, Dave, you absolutely do have to deal with this in the early stages now, where we are now, as being very much around the sort of chaotic side of things. We've got to have, every sort of major decision or every sort of substantial decision around anything to do with AI, we need to have a discussion about, is it hitting our company values? Is it hitting our societal values? And make sure that you have those. We have a code of ethics. Most organizations will have a code of ethics of some sort, a code of AI ethics, and there'll also be the societal values that we want to adhere to as well. We need to be challenging all of those, but what you want to be doing is trying to move more and more of that process back into sort of ethics by design, where it's actually, 99.9999% of the people that work in your organization are going to be hugely ethically concerned about what's going on with what they do. And we need to, or at least I hope that's the case. And then we need to be making sure that we're leveraging that and giving them the tools they need so that they can start, cutting these things off before they become a problem, before we have to have the difficult conversations. But to start with, it has to be a conscious effort to do this. And we need, regular governance discussions around what is going to be the impact of this. And it doesn't go away once something is deployed or whatever. It's there for the entire life cycle, right up to decommissioning.
Well, we've talked, I think, about some aspects of impact so far in terms of like the human in the loop and how that might work, and how it might actually counterintuitively make us less intelligent. So like in abstract terms, I think we've touched on some of that. I wonder if we just get a bit more concrete on what we think the impacts might be in society that might need thinking about. Rob, you want to kick us off with some thinking?
I suppose there's a couple which are looming on the horizon fast. So, and I know it's one that we've talked about before, but with the rise of agentic and that sophistication, is this going to dramatically reshape the workforce? So if I have a 10,000 seat company, does it become a 3,000 seat company? What happens to the 6,000? Do we retrain? How do we do that? How do we cope with that? Because people will get radically more productive. You'll be able to do the same with less, right? So impact number one is there may not be the same jobs around. Impact number two is around that then, well, the flow on is, what do we do about things like how we pay for society? So there's a conversation going on about, do you tax robots? So you've replaced a human with a robot. Do we tax the robot because it's creating output? So something that creates output, that's the fundamental concept of taxation to pay for society. And do we use a universal wage instead? Star Trek future where everything's perfect and everybody's well taken care of and we all live a happy life. And then kind of in the third one there is also when these systems become highly autonomous and adaptive, do they become impenetrable for the human that doesn't get the result they need out of the system, and how do they raise the exception and how do we deal with that? So it's so streamlined. You'll always get a few who don't work within that structure, the exception to the rule. Are they disadvantaged? How do we deal with that as a society? So if you think about those three, we're actually starting to see those types of impacts turning up where people don't get the service they need and they can't penetrate the system to be able to complain and get the right answer. The woman in the Chinese hospital famously on the video having to use a robot to book an appointment, the robot keeps saying no, and then she attacks the robot because she becomes so frustrated with the system that she can't get into for what she really needs help with. and it comes out as a frustration. So there's those
That's
three.
a bit like you trying to use an iPhone, Rob.
It's just Apple need to get better with their interface.
It's great if we tackle the impact, the work. So we started talking about the workforce going from 10,000 to 3,000. I think there's some really interesting things that we're rushing ahead without really considering properly. But if you imagine right now, let's say I have a job and I have 3 core tasks in my job. So I do A, then a B, then a C. That's my 3 parts of my job. If we start using more and more AI, and we actually start saying, right, okay, AI can do most of A and it can do most of B, most of C, and I'm left with B in the middle. And there's a question there as to whether or not I'm going to still get the sort of self-actualization I need from the role if all I'm doing is pressing a big red button in between 2 AI processes every day. And if I'm a trained physician or something, and all I've got to do is do this one thing, I'm likely to get a little bit cheesed off and probably think about leaving. Now, isn't
that human in the loop?
Yeah. Well, it is a human in the loop, but it literally is just a human in the loop that's just pressing a button. If that happens, if we automate too much of a role, then you're going to get into this situation. One of my favorite books is The Machine Stops by E.M. Forster. But believe it or not, the guy who wrote Passage to India and Room with a View wrote a brilliant sci-fi book in 1910 where the entirety of society is run by an AI. It's called The Machine. It doesn't called AI, obviously, at that stage. And when that starts going wrong, they have no idea how to fix it anymore.
It's idiocracy, isn't it? That's the whole thing about they don't know how to run their society.
They don't know how to water their plants with Gatorade. I mean,
it's got electrolytes, though. It's got electrolytes.
Exactly. So we have that risk. So firstly, you've got this risk of people of actually not wanting to do the job anymore, wondering, and you not being able to replace them with similarly skilled people, because why would they want to, why would you want to train as a doctor if a doctor has just become pressing a big red button in the middle of a process? And so we've already seen this. I was actually talking to a colleague recently, and they were saying that a number of the hospitals in France have actually seen doctors actually moving to Africa because actually their skills are much more valued in countries with less technical infrastructure.
Well, I've seen another argument around global medical footprint, but it was almost the counter one to a certain extent, which was saying, like, at the moment, the situation to now has been in, say, Africa and kind of disadvantaged parts of the world. They found it really hard to get very skilled, physicians and doctors and things like that into those areas. Well, how about with an AI assistant? Like everywhere gets a skilled AI physician. It's just a self-service, AI version of it. But the thing with professions for me that that I think about quite a bit and I don't know the answer to, and it's concerning to me, is with a lot of traditional professions, a lot of the first 5, 10, 15 years in that profession were doing things that Gen AI completely eats up today. So what happens then when you're trying to breed judges? Let's say the legal profession. So let's say paralegals and things like that AI could easily target that part of that profession and be extremely effective at it. But how do you therefore, as a human, train yourself? Because that whole training path ends up, if it doesn't end up getting removed, it ends up getting changed very fundamentally. And is it as effective? And therefore, when you say, well, we'll always want human critical thought and human decision making at say judge level or in a courtroom, well, how do you get humans there?
Yeah, there's no path there anymore because they can't go through the junior clerk and all those kind of roles to get there anymore. Yeah. Agreed.
So do you think that's something that ultimately we will need to choose to protect, even though you can automate it, but we might choose to protect it? Or do you just think that actually there is something else there that, maybe because you've got everything at your fingertips, all the information you need, that part of the training is not required and we just don't understand that yet? I'm sort of really wrestling with this as an issue.
Or you short circuit the whole process and you just go straight to Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
Or Judge Dredd.
That is the doorway, the gateway to just make Judge
Could easily
Dredd.
happen, Rob.
That's it's an interesting one. So with the exception of Philip, who here remembers what they were doing on November the 2nd, 1936?
Brutal.
Marcel, what was it like back then?
Okay.
Outrageous.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm not having that pay review conversation with you soon, am I? So if you had been around then and you were in the UK, the chances are you might well have been watching Adele Dixon singing the Magic Rays in the first ever televised broadcast from Alexandra Palace. Okay, so that was our first BBC television broadcast. If you had been doing that, and then you what you would have seen is her standing in a radio studio in front of the BBC Radio Orchestra singing them song Magic Rays. But the weird thing is, for the next 20 years, that's what broadcasting was. It was people standing in radio studios doing the same thing they've been doing without visuals, but in front of a television screen. Okay. And it took us that long before the biggest innovation in that period was renaming the BBC Radio Orchestra to the BBC Television Orchestra.
And that's dramatic.
That is dramatic. That's big for the BBC.
They're renaming it to the BBC iPlayer Orchestra now.
Exactly. But can you imagine though, if the next thing after Adele had been an episode of Geordie Shores? I mean, society was not ready for that. We don't know. The point is, we don't really know where this is taking us. We don't know what's going to happen with society. But what we are doing is we're making huge leaps towards something, but we're not really defining what that something is.
Yeah.
And we're not actually defining a path to get there. And that's why the ethicist role is part of the answer is actually saying, well, okay, it's great if we want to get over here to, I can't remember, Rob, which the example you gave of a sort of utopian, Star Trek. Utopian future. It's great to have that in mind, but we're jumping way ahead in thoughts without actually thinking about the steps that we take to get there, and having gates in that process to say, are we actually doing this in a safe way? Are we doing it in a human-centric, planet-centric way?
There's a great book that I've recently read twice because I was so captivated the first time. I had to absorb it a second time, and that's A New Social Contract by Manoush Shafiq. And it talks, she's an economist by heart, and she's saying that there's such a pace of change upon society at the moment that we have to stop and think what we want from that change. And is it about automation of X, Y? Is it about displacement of the blue collar to white collar? Is it about world society around the haves and have-nots? This whole thing around social contract we need with society, I think, is an important aspect that is there.
Like was she coming at it, Philip, from a point of view of the intentionality of it? Like we can let this happen to us and we can accidentally stumble forward, or we can be intentional as we go forward.
She's talking about it in the respect of it, change is happening. So how do we embrace that change for the good rather than complain about it when it's just passed you by and you're left? Right. And that's what's really good from an economist to talk about that perspective, as in the reality of these big decisions. She's absolutely a citizen of the world, an absolutely fantastic book. She's looking at not just from the westernized perspective. She's genuinely looking at it from societal good, whatever that society is and means for different neighborhoods around the world, and be careful for what you wish for. So that relates back to the earlier conversation with the doctors in Africa. Well, what that means could be perceived as saying, oh, we're trying out this AI doctor bit. Oh, let's try it out in Africa.
Right.
That's wrong. Right. So let's be careful on what we wish for. And I think there's an underlying currency on there is the last 15 years, I think technology and its use has matured significantly because of this critical thinking, systems engineering has simplified and accelerated the adoption of some of the leading technology. And I say long prevail, but there's additional thing on there, which we talked about, critical thinking, but unstructured thinking in terms of what's the implication of this, because we have to address it from an ethicist perspective. We have to say, what if? It's because we should be curious enough to ask rather than just think, all a Kool-Aid, right? We should be just kind of pausing for thought, I think, around, should we? What's the implications? And that comes into societal contract, not just, it's good for me. whatever, because we need to be kinder as people. Yeah.
Maybe let's briefly then look at our readiness and where we're up to as organizations, as society, and as individuals in terms of going down this path. So, do we have the quality of data that's supporting this? We touched on that a little bit earlier, the human-driven data, the plethora of AI-driven data now, and then the quality of that and whether it's helpful or not. Do we think we have the skill sets, and do we understand even what those skill sets need to be? James, where do you think we are in sort of readying ourselves as organizations and society for the sort of challenges Philip was setting out?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and we're kind of like looping in a lot of the things we've already discussed together. They've all got a touch point into this. So we've all seen the issues around the sort of intellectual property challenges of getting enough data to satisfy the existing brute force approach of just throwing as much data as you can at an LLM to actually train it. We're also seeing that within that data, as we discussed before, there's an amount of it that's generative AI created as well, and that amount is expanding. But I don't know. We don't know how much data we need to achieve because we don't really know what the end goal is. So we're not really quite clear on where we're trying to get with this. Is the data of the high enough quality? I mean, historically, no, because a lot of the data that we have from the past. I mean, I think they've kind of masked over this now in a lot of the image generation tools. But if you were to say, draw me a picture of a boardroom, it is going to be 10 white men in their 50s sitting around a table. That's what you would have got, because that was the reality of where society was in the historic data, and it's not where we are now, and it's not where we'll ever be, thank God. So there are issues with historic data being useful for us, and then that puts a counter argument that maybe actually synthetic data can be better because you can make it less biased in that way. But I do think we have to be slightly careful here. There's a topic that doesn't get discussed that much, or that's starting to bubble up now, and actually particularly since DeepSeek came out, people have started to recognize this. It's about who we're actually asking to choose that data, or who is choosing what data is used to train the model. As an example, the reason the DeepSeek gets asked gets brought up is if you ask DeepSeek about Tiananmen Square, it will go, oh, nothing happened here. But at the same time, if you think about was it Project Orion? He's called it, the US, or Stargate, right? Stargate. He's chucking money into all these different things to try and advance AI in the States. He's got a bit of a hold on there. So imagine, I could definitely see a situation where some of the models in the States are going to start having a political leaning.
Yeah. This touches, doesn't it, on sovereign AI and nation-state AI, where the AI imbues language, values, economics of that particular nation-state, and you don't have to take too many leaps of the imagination to get to a pretty interesting stage with kind of nation-state agents talking to nation-state agents, and full AI kind of global interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, I would predict that there will be models out there that are very anti-abortion. There'll be models that the flat Earth models, for all I know. But it's.
We didn't land on the moon models. They could go together, can't they? They'd be too agentic in a pub talking about the Earth was flat and we never landed on the moon because we could never get there or something.
Is that a virtual pub? Virtual pub.
An augmented, sat there. You can imagine everybody, the crazy conspiracy theorists with their Vision Pros on, interacting with the models. I think this. You know what? Although I don't agree with the belief of flat Earth or we didn't land on the moon, I do think there's a business market there. So maybe I could exploit it. Is that ethical?
That's copyright Cloud Realities Productions. We'll work out the ethics later, Rob.
But this comes on to capitalism, right? So you just said, okay, I can make money out of this one, which is kind of one of the corrosive parts of AI is I can make money on this.
Yeah.
And
very much so.
That is, I'd say, eroding some of the purity of it because, okay, I can make more money if I do this bit, in which case, ethically, should I be doing that? And we have to kind of govern ourselves on those things, or else we're all capitalists, right?
Yeah, but that's the thing. After Alan
Very much so.
Greenspan, the East were defeated by the West with economics, we got wrapped around the axle. I've used this before, and we just go, "Ooh, money," and we just ran away with it, and we didn't think about the implications, did we? So my view is there is quite a strong risk, because the incentivization of making money is strong in our community and society at the moment, that is a driving force that we can't put the brakes on properly to say, hang on a minute, do you really want to do that? I think that actually capitalism will be the reason why we make a huge set of mistakes with this.
Yeah, the commercial arms race aspect of it has been something that we've noodled on before on the show, and is concerning.
And they fall behind from a political perspective. They fall behind the if we don't do it, someone else will do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone evil will do it first, as their argument. And actually, it just doesn't register, because they're all thinking the same thing. And if we could just get some communication going between naming countries, China and the US, and that we could actually get some standards that would mean that we could both benefit from this rather than both destroying each other with it. That's very existential. But anyway.
On that existential thought, maybe let's start to wrap up a little bit. I think we've had a pretty good walk around, and it's always on this subject. I think that when you just scratch the surface of it, you realize just how deep it goes, and it feels like we've had a good roam around. I'm not sure though we've even begun to fully explore the subject, but maybe that's multiple podcasts on that, I suspect, in the future. Where I wanted to go though is I wanted to touch on something you talked about really early on, James, which was the industrial age and the dawn of the industrial age, and how it took us a while to sort of accommodate that as a society, for want of a better expression. As we move into the intelligence age then, do you think there are lessons that we can learn from the previous adoption of technologies, or is this so different that we're in new territory?
No, I think there are lessons we can learn, and I don't think we are. In fact, I saw the Nobel Prize round table that they hold after each year after the Nobel Prize winners get put around a table to discuss topics, and Demis Hassabis, obviously, who won one of the prizes last year, just said, it's going to be great. It's just going to be like the Industrial Revolution. And thankfully, there was an economist at the table that said, actually, do you know what actually happened during the Industrial Revolution? Yeah. So the trouble is, the people that are leading these things don't know history. And I think history is a really, really important thing for people to understand.
Burn coal because it's going to power everything. Well, the implications are, etc. So the implications need to be considered, and the winners and losers are across society or across geographies or whatever, without being too dramatic about it. We just need to acknowledge that some things, we got to kind of remember through clear coloured glasses to say, okay, winners and losers.
Because, absolutely. It's 30 or 40 years of abject suffering for the workforce that were displaced and had to move to cities, and all the diseases that came in as a result of this sudden overcrowding of cities and all that sort of stuff. Now, I'm not saying, obviously, that's not going to happen. It's not going to be that kind of revolution, but it's still going to have the same effect. You're going to have people losing their livelihoods or finding themselves, not having the jobs that they enjoy, displaced in some way. This brings us to something that you mentioned, Rob, which is around, do we need a UBI kind of concept or a tax paid for with a tax on agents and so on? And there are steps that we should be taking now if we were going to do that, which we're not taking. So it feels like we're almost a little bit late already. We know we are, but late already in dealing with the societal impacts. If we were going to tax agents, we need to have a clear way of identifying agents. They would need identities. And then you get into a whole ethical discussion around human rights versus AI rights and all that kind of stuff as well, which is another area I talk about a lot. And it's it's a frightening area to think about. We're not doing this. The Declaration of Human Rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, does not cover enough clauses to actually cope with us co-inhabiting with effectively another species, as in AI agents.
Ez, after that, where's your head at?
Yeah, I think it's touching upon a lot of things that we've already discussed, but maybe more from a philosophical point of view and purpose and systemic transformation as well. So we have that shift from classical technology to quantum, right? And we're already talking about huge leaps. So this is also going to be a huge leap for us as human beings. Quantum forces us to move from certainty to probability, from control to interconnection. And that mind shift mirrors how organizations should also be evolving. And I think Frederick Laloux's words, I don't know if you know the book, Teal Organizations is what he's talking about. And he speaks to self-management, wholeness, and evolutionary purpose. And with AI and quantum, you could see them as accelerators, maybe. But we've already discussed, is that, really something that AI could do for us? To have those principles feel more actionable than ever using tech for that sense of helping us survive as a species, or maybe go to a next level, maybe even. So leaders must also cultivate those networks that can dynamically scale and adapt, from ego to eco. And I was thinking about that in terms of ethics, because what we now see in ethics, it's more about preventing harm, making sure that it's that it's fair, that it's unbiased, that it's respectful, privacy. But that's all with a fixed mindset. It's not harming us. What is best for me? Am I gaining money out of this? But if you go into that other shift, that teal organization, evolutionary, it could be even a compass. It could help us drive our purpose. And Wouter Hart is talking about moving from the meaning. So instead of, okay, we can go to a Star Wars kind of world, future, or are we using AI to help us drive the compass and then see where it's going to take us? That's a huge shift in mind shift as well. And I was wondering, do you actually have conversations about ethics that are more compass driven instead of protect driven? Do you already see that shift happening, or is it mostly protecting?
I think at this stage, most of the it's a brilliant point, Esmee, but I love that concept. I think that most of the conversations I have at the moment are definitely around the sort of protection view that you give. But I think part of the reason for that is that we can't, or at least we're not ready to accept and trust AI. In order for us to be able to say, right, you're going to shift us to go over in this direction, we've actually got to trust the AI, and we're not at that point at the moment. Philip, you going to say something? I was
just going to say that the trust will be eroded if you ask this AI thing one question, and 2 minutes later you ask it the same question again, and it's different answer. So we must be able to audit the decisioning that AI can give us, which is probably the industrialization of AI. How do we ensure that it's consistently giving us the answer, or else decisions will be made and say, well, actually, a week later, it's giving me a different answer, which is going to kind of erode that trust. So we've got to kind of protect ourselves from expectations of what we put on AI, or else it's going to start eroding our confidence levels in embedding this AI to help us answer it. And yet, actually, certain times those answers are going to be changed because it's learning, and we have to understand that as a living beast.
Do you think, if we're talking about the intelligent age, could we make that maybe emotional intelligence age? I would love that, that it actually helps us increase our emotional intelligence instead of the tech intelligence, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely right.
And actually, there's an interesting point on that. That as we've already talked a lot about the fact that it could potentially dumb us down, where so we're no longer thinking about stuff so much. So someone, I think it might have been Yuval Noah Harari, but I'm not sure it's one of his. But he talked about the transition from Homo sapiens to Homo sentiens, where it's all about feeling as opposed to wisdom and intelligence.
Which is right or wrong, right? Not right or wrong. It's a feeling, right?
And I think there's that point about humans change their answers as they get older. So a question you ask a 20-year-old and you ask it when they're 50 because they've got more knowledge under their belt.
They've forgotten what they said at 20.
Yeah, but they can change. Quite belief systems, although very rooted in structure for the human, and they don't move fast, they do move.
Yeah.
There is that as well, which is like you can change your opinion on something. It's okay, but as long as it's based on there was an experience, it's audible. So to your point, I had an experience. I now understand this better. I've changed my mind.
Yeah.
And I was with you, and you're thinking there as right up until you said Star Wars is in the future, and actually everyone knows it was a long, long time ago. So it
was a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Let it go.
I really don't like it, to be honest. I don't have a clue about the series. I'm sorry, I'm hurting a lot of people right now, but
this is too late in the show to bring up such a monumental issue.
I know. Sorry.
Oh man,
I'm tired now.
Star Trek, Star Wars, you can't confuse the two, right?
I mean, they're worlds apart.
I understand the difference of the two.
Well, one's in the future, one's in the past. That's the first delineation between the two, isn't it?
And one's right, one's wrong, right?
Well, one's actually happened, so one's truth, the other's prediction.
Right. One's literally history just being replayed out. Yeah.
Marshall, do you like it? I'm just trying to find somebody who's actually with me on this.
Good luck.
I've never seen it.
You've never seen Star Wars.
I do not believe you for a second.
Only small parts.
I don't believe you for a second.
Thank you.
Well, look, on that extremely controversial note, I mean, we up until then the show I thought was going very well.
I quite liked Esmee and Marcel.
Yeah, I know,
now I'm going to have to dislike them. I don't know if I can cope with this, Dave.
It derailed right at the last minute, Robert.
It's terrible. This is it.
We'll have a production meeting as soon as this is done.
We're just you and me, by the way, just to sort this.
What I like to say is the new production team.
Don't bring me in as a witness. I'm not going to fall into that one, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, look, thank you very much to Philip and James for joining our Access All Areas chat today. Good to see you guys.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much, guys. It's really fun.
Now, we end every episode of this podcast by asking our guests what they're excited about doing next. And that could be you're looking forward to seeing the new Andor episodes that have dropped this week, which is excellent Star Wars content, Esmee. Or it might be something in your professional life, or it might be a little bit of both. So, Philip, why don't you kick us off? What are you excited about doing next?
I've had a pretty phenomenal week, actually, and I need to distill this into thinking bit. And I've been working in a challenging area of our working submarines. And in that submarines, we are introducing LLMs and AI and all that type of stuff. And it's phenomenal. And it's brilliant thinking person's agenda. It's wonderful. We've got to make it real. And my mind's exploding at the moment because of the people we put in the room is just awesome. I've got to distill that. So I'm looking forward to a 3-day weekend where I can kind of not think about things.
Let your subconscious work away on stuff.
And I think benefit from post-work. So yeah, lazy bugger. I want to kind of take time out and distill. So I'm looking forward to getting to the sun at the weekend and doing little thinking and kind of getting back to kind of the whole self.
Well, enjoy yourself doing that. And I think it is going to be a nice long weekend with a bit of sun. So it should be nice in the garden with a drink of your choice. James, what are you excited about doing next?
I've just been asked to be an advocate for an organisation called Safe AI for Children. Brilliant. And I've committed that I'm going to spend some time thinking about how I can actually help. So I'm actually really looking forward to spending the weekend just having a bit of a brainstorm with myself about what can I do to actually contribute to what they're doing, which I think is fabulous.
I mean, that's...
Brainstorm. Is that like schizophrenic or?
Yes.
Is that like
bipolar brain?
Isn't that called a thought shower now? Isn't that called a thought shower? Because it's too... Brainstorming is too violent,
too aggressive.
Yeah, it's too assertive and violent. It's a thought shower.
Okay, it doesn't quite have. Yeah, okay, no.
Sorry,
I've learned something today.
I'm just impressed with how meaningful both your weekends are going to be. I mean, I was just thinking of sitting and staring at the TV.
Cassandra, right?
Yeah.
Exactly, man. I've only seen the first 2 episodes of this week's drop.
Oh, I might treat myself to a Black Mirror episode at some stage.
Oh, yeah.
The first 2 were so depressing. First episode just absolutely horrible. Horrible.
Yeah. It really.
Chris O'Dowd does a very good.
That was amazing. Really good. That was a good one.
But I did wonder, a spoiler alert, but I did wonder why he didn't just drive her out of the county. Seems a much more humane way to turn her off.
When she got out of range?
Yeah. So why didn't he just drive her out of the county?
Oh, I see what you're saying. For that. Yeah. Good point. That would have been a little more straightforward, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It was a good one.
Less dramatic.
Anyway, that was for those who didn't pick up on it. It's, I think, season 7, episode 1, Common People, and very much worth a watch. Very much worth a watch.
But not a happy place. So yeah, don't use it.
I wonder if they addressed ethics.
I think Black Mirror is turning into a full examination of that, really, isn't it? When you sort of step back from it, I mean, that's effectively what it's about.
Is Charlie Brooker the new George Orwell, right?
Yeah, one of the most sort of preeminent thinkers of our age, really, like really doing it in a populist way. You know what I mean?
Good science fiction is always the best source of ethical discussions that I come across. Right. I used to say science fiction is today's science fiction is tomorrow's iPhone. So that's talking about the technology side of things. But I also think that in good science fiction, they always address the ethical issues that we don't address easily in real life.
If you would like to discuss any of the issues on this week's show and how they might impact you and your business, please get in touch with us at cloudrealities@capgemini.com. We're all on LinkedIn. We love to hear from you, so feel free to connect and DM if you have any questions for the show to tackle. And of course, please rate and subscribe to our podcast. It really helps us improve the show. A huge thanks to Philip and James, our sound and editing wizards Ben and Louis, our producer Marcel, and of course to all our listeners. See you in another reality next week.